Guest is Kayode Delola, is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Let us say thank you so much for coming and thank you for your patience as well.
Thank you very much.
Let's see how you can intervene on this matter. I think my natural question, two-in-one question. The last thing the politician, the PDP man said, Mr. Duhati said, was that we don't really need opposition. I don't know what that means. Maybe you can interpret that for us. But in addition to that, is the fact that it looks like the Supreme Court or the court, or judiciary in general, indemnifying itself as far as leadership and membership of political parties is concerned, has now caused more problem for internal party democracy than we've ever had, although lower courts are assuming jurisdiction. Funny. What do you make of it?
Well, first, the courts will only interpret the laws as they are, not as they ought to be. The political parties are bound by the statutes that enable INEC to register political parties and how what the spread they must have, how they must conduct their affairs, and how INEC was recorded to participate, to observe their internal democracy, the primaries, the conventions, and what have you. On the other hand, the political parties must have their own constitutions that determine how they carry out their activities. And once those constitutions are in place and they are also registered with the INEC, those political parties are bound. Therefore, when you bring a matter before a court and say that a political party, perhaps its hierarchy, its management, or its executive council or its national working committee has failed to comply with any of its rules, then it should be the responsibility of the courts to pronounce if that is so, and to also rule that what they have done outside the provisions of the law or the constitution have been null and void. Therefore, we cannot blame the courts, except, of course, like we have said again and again, where people try to use the power of the courts to have their own vested interests come into play by going before courts of coordinated jurisdiction multiple times in order to mislead them into giving conflicting decisions. But unfortunately, whilst we may criticize those who do this, we cannot absolve our courts completely where they are aware that a court which is of coordinated jurisdiction has given an order or a judgment, and a similar court then goes ahead to give something contradictory. It sends very wrong signals. And that is what I believe our courts should refrain from doing. So if you say that our courts have brought in more problems now into the party democracy or party organization and structure, I will agree with you to an extent. We have to come out of this situation where there's uncertainty about what the courts will rule. We should be able to say that this is what the law says, and no matter what court you go to in the land, the outcome will be the same.
Go ahead, land on your thoughts, sir, please.
Yes, and for the second item which you mentioned about whether we need opposition or not, it is clear that we need opposition in the kind of democracy we're practicing. We have multi-party system. We have different candidates that will come in. One person will surely win, and the others will not win. So what we need is others to stand in the gap, ensure that those who have won and who occupy the seats of authority do what they have to do. Opposition does not mean quarrel. Opposition does not mean a fight. It just simply means that you're putting the winners to the test of the integrity, or the responsibility, and the ability to carry out the responsibility they have asked that the electorate give them the opportunity to carry out. That's my position on that.
Let us say, without belaboring the issue, I've read a couple of Supreme Court judgments, and especially when it comes to these issues. I remember one of those judgments. forgotten the judge, the Lord Justice now, who wrote that judge. I think it was a contributory judgment, who said, we said it over and over again, that issues around political party membership, those are the words, leadership, are exclusive preserve of the political party. So the only window is perhaps the Electoral Act 2022, Section 84, subsection 15, that has to do with nomination of candidates for election. So so outside that window that is clearly written, politicians have found a way to find themselves in court. Help us interpret, outside the window of nominations and all of that, is there any other reason with the decision of the Apex Court where the politicians should ever approach the court again?
As I said, only when the constitution of that political party has been flouted, or where the laws as regards INEC and how they must interrelate with the political parties. It is not for the courts to determine who's going to be their chairman. It's not for the courts to determine who's going to be the executive committee. But then there has to be a mechanism by which conflicts within political parties are resolved. Let's face it, even in families, you have brothers taking brothers to court, because then again, we say that's the last hope of the common man. Ordinarily, what the court is saying is that political parties ought to be able to resolve their internal wranglings without necessarily coming to the court. And worse still, when they come to the court, they drag INEC along with them. The truth is, if there's an issue about who should be chairman or who should be secretary, there ought to be a platform where they can take these disagreements to and have them resolved. I don't want to mention political parties because one wants to sound non-partisan here, but there are parties where you do not have these wranglings day in, day out. How do they manage? Well, some people may say, oh, well, maybe because they have some overriding power there and who just tells them what to do, what not to do. Maybe it works out for them, I don't know. But we are approaching 2027. We need to have a multi-party system. We need to have more political parties than having singularly APC. We don't want to have only APC running across the field as if it's just a one-man route. We want to have a viable PDP. We want to have a viable NNPP. We want to have a viable ADC and an APGA, so that at the end of the day, whoever wins will know that they have indeed fought a gallant fight and they have obtained the mandate of the people. So issues about PDP, honestly, I think when we consider how far PDP has come, they ought to be able to resolve these issues, and that's what the courts are saying. Internally, there must be a mechanism for resolving these issues. But when everybody, statesmen, are leaving the PDP for other political parties, and then they're leaving others to fight to a bitter end, it's not good for the party. It's not good for the electorate. It's not good for our democracy. It's not good for our electoral system. So at the end of the day, we'll find perhaps in interest. Yes.
Yeah, in closing, I'm sorry to say, but it looks like the parties do not have the maturity to put their own house in order, which is why things end up in court. Ideally, it should be they should have the maturity to collapse their ego or whatever it is they have to collapse to find a path. It's about interest wrangling. Everybody wants something on that table. But they've lost the ability to do that, and they end up in court. What is now left for the court? Because they are now back to the place that pronouncement is not supposed to be made in that direction. So what is now left for the court in terms of decision going forward?
Well, if a matter is brought before a court has to take a decision. Now, the Federal High Court has ruled, say that INEC shouldn't recognize this, the outcome of the convention in Ibadan, until the law has been complied with. So if the court says that until the law has been complied with, it means that we cannot allow a state of lawlessness. Therefore, now that they've gone on appeal, the appellate court will have a right to take a decision. And I had to refrain from using the word which you used, the word maturity. Indeed and in truth, I think a lot more maturity is required to ensure that these political parties behave the way they ought to, in our own interest and in their own interest as well. Thank you very much.
I wish I had more time. I wanted to delve into the issue of defection that has been messed up by some of the political class. Despite the locus classicals of Abegunde and the Ondo State House of Assembly, politicians have now found a way to separate disagreement from defection as a premise to leave their party. Yeah. Interesting days.
Absolutely.
But we'll need your intervention in some of that conversation. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Good night.